Hello and welcome to another episode of the Personal Record Podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Clark. A few weeks ago, I participated in one of the coolest running events that I've done in probably ever. I think it was a pretty unique experience in my running world. And that event, of course, was the Midnight Half Marathon, which, if you follow us on Instagram, you probably saw a bunch of pictures posted. And it really was one of the coolest things I've ever done. One of our season 1 guests, Joe DiNoto, the founder of the Orchard Street Runners, is kind of the brainchild of that event. And I'm joined here with Joe and, of course, his newest partner in crime, David August Trimble, who has quite the resume for himself. David is actually the founder of the Red Hook Crit, which if you're a member of the New York City cycling scene, you definitely know who he is and definitely what that is, both of which are extremely cool events, really a lot of fun, and really kind of take both endurance and just partying, kind of merge the two and really bring it into this really fun event. And again, I'm proud to have Joe DiNoto and David August Trimble here with me today. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the Personal Record Podcast.
Thanks for coming over, actually.
We're actually here in Red Hook, which I joked earlier that David really doubled down on the Red Hook theme. He kind of built a brand which kind of went international. He had a bunch of races kind of around the world, Milan and other places. Right?
Milan, Barcelona, London, and now there's all these Europeans with the Red Hook tattooed on their body somewhere, which is kind of weird.
Is that right?
That's.
Are there any OSR tattoos out there?
I hope not. I haven't seen one. Actually, Lee Gerson, the 2-time winner of the Midnight Half, has 12 a.m. half on her hand.
That's right. It's pretty legit. Thing. All right, that's good. Yeah. And she likes her tattoos. You know, yeah. she's out there.
She's got a few.
But yeah, so we kind of discussed this earlier. You guys have. I really want to get into the Midnight Half and what goes into that and kind of the behind the scenes and how much hard work it is for you guys and all the things that went into it. But again, you guys just have these really special connections with your racers, more so than I'd say any other race director that I can think of. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Give me a little history on the Red Hook Crit before we get into the Midnight Half, and just what your experience was with that, and how eventually you kind of fused that and married your experiences there with Joe.
Yeah, I mean the Red Hook Crit and pretty much any race I'm involved in at this level, it's designed to be the type of event that I would want to race in myself. So I raced, a lot of different kind of bikes, mountain bikes, road bikes, bike messenger, alleycat races, and I kind of took the elements from each kind of race and then designed my own event based on what I wanted to experience at a race. And I think that's why, we tend to have a really strong connection to the athletes, because we were really thinking about what would make it a special experience for them.
The Red Hook Crit, for those that don't know, was it's a bike. A criterium in the cycling world is usually like a 1 kilometer or so lap. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's a short 1 kilometer circuit, many laps. It's really designed to be spectator friendly.
Right. Exactly.
Really short and intense.
And it's I've been on the sidelines spectating at the Red Hook Crit a number of times, and just it was really always funny to me just to be standing there and just feel this vortex of wind as these riders are passing. It can almost move you if anyone is ever out there has ever doubted what drafting can feel like in a cycling race. I'd say go to the Red Hook Crit and stand on the side and be like, oh, all right, I get it now. Yeah. So you were very successful at that. You had such an amazing turnout. Again, a really fun party at the end of it, just like the Midnight Half did. And so you guys, at what point did you guys start working together?
2011, I had started Orchard Street Runners, and Dave was one of the first people to show up for the runs. And I think it was 2012 when we started to do stuff together.
Yeah, well, I mean, we designed and put on the first Midnight Half together. So I've been involved since the beginning on it. I think I was at the second ever OSR run, maybe. So we've known each other a very long time. Joe helped at the Crit for many years. It's definitely not a new partnership.
All right, yeah. So you, Joe and I had discussed last year when he was a guest of the show that for a series of reasons the Midnight Half you guys took a little sabbatical for a couple of years, just kind of for a number of reasons. Why bring it back this year, and what changed, what was different, and how was it enhanced?
I mean, this year was kind of exceptional in a few ways. One being Dave was available. to put some time into it. Another being a partner signed on as a major sponsor. And part of the criteria for us to bring the race back was to have
Name the sponsor. Come on,
Nike NYC was kind enough.
A small startup, Nike.
Yeah. They they were nice enough to get involved after working with me for the last year or so on smaller races. I had been whispering in their ear for about a year about this race called the Midnight Half that none of them had ever seen before because it kind of preceded their involvement in the community. So with the allure of the other races I was doing last year, I guess they saw the value and the potential of this other bigger event. So we were able to secure some sponsorship, and Dave's availability brought it all together.
So the Midnight Half, which is kind of along the same theme as the Alley Cat racing, which again is kind of an urban sort of cycle race, where you have different checkpoints throughout the city, or different checkpoints wherever, and the idea is to go to each checkpoint however you see fit. Get there the shortest way possible, the longest way possible if you want, maybe the most scenic way, whatever you're looking for. That's the way you get there. So you go from point to point to point, and eventually make your way back to the finish line. And that's how the Midnight Half was structured. It also happened to be, and I apologize for this because the majority of the races I've done the last couple of years have had tremendous amounts of rain. I've just had a tremendous amount of unlucky days racing, and the Midnight Half was no different. Although I think it really added to the ambiance that you guys were putting together.
You can't go wrong.
The worse weather, the better for the Midnight Half.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, the alleycat format's amazing, and I raced bike alleycats for many years, and I don't know why, but no one had seemed to have done it before in running, and
at least not to a scale where it was noticeable.
So the Midnight Half really kind of started this kind of urban running races.
Yeah, well, again, you guys married those two things, just running and you don't really think about running as like this sort of subversive, sort of countercultural scene, and you've guys have kind of created one. Not that I think any of those people are really subversive. They're mainstreamish, but there's definitely kind of a smaller, edgier element to the racers of the Midnight Half and OSR in general.
It was funny to begin with too, that nobody had ever really approached running with a different point of view than kind of what they're ingrained as they grow up by, what they see on TV or the Olympics, and the idea of being able to run anywhere because terrain is irrelevant when you're on foot. You don't have to stick to any particular sidewalk or street. You can do both.
Yeah, I think there's actually a big advantage with the fact that I knew nothing about running. So I didn't care that the runners were obsessed with their time or having exact distances, or the first running race I ever organized was with the Red Hook Crit in Milan in 2011. And I didn't even measure the course, and the runners were so mad at me afterwards. But just this idea that, running doesn't have to be so rigid. It can be fun and actually a cultural experience beyond just did I beat my PR, or
it can be adventurous.
Yeah, it can be adventurous.
Let me ask you this. I just had this idea. I'd say the majority of your runners, if not all of your runners, are experienced. Whether or not some of them are hyper fast, but even if they're not fast, they've definitely been running for a very long time. Do you think that plays into it? Do you think they're just bored and tired of the 10Ks, the 5Ks, these standard, let me run and, meet my time goals. Let me go out and do my half marathon, my marathon. They're just looking for something different and unstructured.
They seem to respond to any kind of challenge you can conceptualize in a way. I tried to get experimental in the last year, making odd race start times or weird criteria for courses, and it always seemed to have a strong response, and I just think they're willing to accept any challenge that you throw at them.
Well, who is they? Who is the runner? Do you think it is just that adventure seeker within the running world, or is it that just somebody who just that type A sort of person, and maybe not type A, but just that person that just wants to look for challenges and wants kind of uncertainty?
I think there's a commonality between these people, that maybe they're a little tired of the mundane, or they want to do something that feels a little more exhilarating than a closed course during a day, and an open course at night kind of provides all these elements that you can't recreate on a controlled environment. So,
and they're heroes in our events, and they're just anonymous numbers, and like a New York Roadrunners event. So this gives them a chance to really shine and show off their talents.
We touched upon this a little bit before we started recording. You really do a great job in post-production, for lack of a better word. A lot of your social media feeds, you're really highlighting, again, not just the winners, not just like the top 3 or whoever, but you're highlighting people that made a mark on the race in one way or another, and you're really telling their story. I can't even think of another example where another event would really do that outside of maybe like Shalane Flanagan. Even that's usually the same old, the good old American girl came out here and won the New York City Marathon, which is great. But you guys really you use your runners to tell a story, especially with the phenomenal pictures and the phenomenal photographers and videographers you guys have at your events.
Well, I think there's a difference in an event that's engineered around the user experience versus a sponsorship kind of dictated requirement. And when you can cater every element of that experience towards the individual, I think you get more out of that individual in that event. There's more of a sense of ownership in being involved in something small scale where there's a direct acknowledgement, like Dave said.
Yeah, and we're both huge fans of the race. So like we're posting photos and working with photographers and telling these stories that we find really interesting. Like we're excited. Yeah, we're super excited to share all of this. So, it's a real passion project for us. So we're not just trying to, complete the event and then, take the money and go on to the next one. Like we're kind of obsessed with this idea of building a sport around urban running.
What are the larger goals with that, or do you have larger goals?
I mean, it's always race by race, depending on what's happening with partnerships, but we want to do more of these races on the scale of the last midnight half, and we want to take it to new cities when possible.
Very cool. What cities? Where am I going next?
Europe. Europe. We're going to Europe.
Yeah.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we want that's
cool.
That's
I mean, you have the connections over there, I would imagine.
Yeah. So
OSR Milan.
That's the dream.
I mean, it only makes sense to take advantage of every advantage in the arsenal, and given the infrastructure Dave's created around the world, if we can get the partnership, we might as well take advantage of that.
Yeah, people will love it anywhere we do it.
So which one of you orchestrated the course? Who came up with the course?
Dave is the course designer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of that's really when I organize races. That's a part of the organization that I really get obsessive about and enjoy the most.
There is a ton of room for creativity.
Yeah,
especially
too much almost. You get like anxiety because there's right. You can go anywhere, literally anywhere, and you're just like, oh man, I got to narrow this down.
So Joe, you grew up in Queens. I grew up in Brooklyn. The Midnight Half was entirely orchestrated on the streets of Brooklyn. Is this proof that Brooklyn's better than Queens?
I'm going to unofficially say no, but that could be an argument in favor of that. But I think Brooklyn was a goal for this race for us for the last couple of years that we had done the race. We were always
Brooklyn's
thinking
where it's at.
Well, it's just you're kind of chasing New York with these events, and Manhattan is not what it used to be, and meaning that the little nuances about the way things work that enable you to execute certain types of stuff, don't exist in the same capacity that they used to. So you kind of chase.
We would love to do the Midnight Half in Queens. Man, could do some really cool courses there.
I don't, because I don't know Queens at all.
It's a true Queens native.
Brooklyn, yeah, right.
There'll be some trail running involved.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. Queens, for those that don't know, the streets, the naming of the streets in Queens makes no sense whatsoever. 43rd Drive and Road and Avenue and Place and all these other things.
I did a bike alley cat in Queens once called the Boulevards of Death. So.
Yeah, along Queens Boulevard, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, you had to cross it like 10 times or something.
That's a dangerous affair. Yeah. I kind of consider that race like my home field advantage. I either lived or I've spent significant amounts of time on every single part of that course, except probably Red Hook. That was probably the part that I didn't. Yeah. I had probably spent the least amount of time on, and I don't know if I'm proud or ashamed to admit this, but I actually drove down to Red Hook like a day or two before the race to scout, what's the fastest way to get from the Hamilton Avenue Bridge over to, it's not, I mean,
which way did you go?
Hick Street, I think.
not the fastest.
No, which one? Which is is Hicks or Henry goes through the projects? I think it's Henry.
You would have gone through the projects and then diagonally through the IKEA parking lot.
That's kind of what I did. I went through and I cut through the Red Hook track.
Yeah. Did you go through the parking lot then? Through the underground parking garage?
Briefly. I took a little tangent there. I went on the left-hand side of IKEA. For those that don't know, this is getting really into the weeds of this race, but I'm going to leave this in.
Yeah, you could have shaved off maybe like 100 feet.
I was fairly happy. I had 13.84 was my total mileage.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that. I made one real tactical error. I was running with Eric Reidinger, Evan Cooper, and a couple other guys. We were kind of yo-yoing back and forth, and that was a little bit ahead of them. We got to the 8th Avenue overpass, and I went straight on 8th Avenue.
Yeah,
and
that's a mistake.
That was a big mistake.
You can cut diagonally through a lot of the parks.
Prospect, exactly. Yeah, because like as soon as I went straight, thinking, "Yep, all right, this is the way to go." I was so confident in that, and then I didn't hear them behind me anymore, and I was like, "Fuck, what do they know that I don't know?" Then we finally made our way back down to the Bell House, and I went from 50 feet ahead of them to an avenue behind them. Wow. So I saw them crossing 3rd Avenue and 7th Street as I was on 4th Avenue.
If it makes you feel better, the winner of the race did exactly the same thing.
8th Avenue?
At 8th Avenue, he went straight, went all the way down to 7th, actually, and just straight down, and he lost a couple blocks, which he had to make back up.
And he still won.
So, yeah, I guess it should make you feel worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
He didn't use it as an excuse.
Exactly.
He overcame that challenge.
And wasn't griping about it on a podcast several weeks later still. God. All right. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the winners. So we had Jordan. How do you pronounce his last name?
O'Donoghue.
Is it really that simple? Okay.
Yeah.
Jordan O'Donoghue. And of course, Personal Record Podcast, friend of the show, Caitlin Phillips. The two of them really took down the race in pretty tremendous fashion.
Yeah, I was really happy to see Caitlin win again. And
Caitlin was the poster child of the race.
Yeah, and she's a great champion. She's very humble, and she's got great sportsman mentality and everything else. And Jordan, I've watched Jordan come from an average runner up to something substantial, and
he's not average anymore.
Not anymore, and he's only been running, I think, under 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
God.
He's sharpening that stone still.
Yeah, that's good for him. How old is he?
I think he's in his 20s, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say 25 to 27 in that area, but I'm not 100% sure.
He ran a 1:18, which is that's a substantial time on that course. It's not it wasn't a true half marathon. And again, you're running through streets and
he did over 14 miles.
Yeah,
so.
He was moving,
and he was never I don't think he was ever breathing hard. I was riding alongside him most of the race, and he was so calm and just slowly just putting it on throughout the race, whereas some of the other runners started out way too fast and started dying towards the end.
Well, starting out way too fast was kind of it was part of the race.
With the prologue.
You guys had a little prologue at the very beginning. It was a 1.4 mile loop. Again, starting and stopping at the Bell House on 7th Street in the Gowanus section of Brooklyn, running around Whole Foods and all that. But there was actually a cash prize given out for that. So you had different cash prizes throughout the race, which is, again, I wouldn't say like a kind of a cycling sort of thing.
In the Red Hook Crit, we do the first lap preem, and this was just kind of carrying on that tradition of making the race start out brutally hard.
And spectator friendly.
Yeah, I mean, really the whole point of it was so that the runners would come back through the Bell House and all the spectators would get to see what was happening.
It's really smart to do it that way. When triathlon was becoming an Olympic sport, it was at the time this kind of you go out on the swim and you come back, and then you go out on the bike and you come back an hour later, and you go out on the run, you come back 30 minutes later, and those fans are like, who's winning? What's going on out there? But in order to become an Olympic sport, it had to be TV friendly, right? And so that's one of the things they did. They started making it into this crit sort of format where you're actually running around loop after loop after loop, and biking around, and it just makes it, again, just a spectator friendly thing, because at the end of the day,
you're not going down a straight road for 50 miles or something.
I'll see you guys in an hour and 18 minutes. Hopefully you're still here.
On a race like this, it opens up a lot of exposure, because you're really congregating a lot of people on the street. But we took the risk, and it worked out. It was super high energy.
That start was phenomenal. I mean, I hate to say it about our own event, but the way that the sequencing started with the women first, and then 10 minutes later the men, and just the way the context and the atmosphere of that start line, like the garbage truck taking its time and letting us do our start before it took off, and then as he pulled away, everybody screaming and cheering for him. It's again.
I didn't see that part, but
it's part of that community that makes, I think, people feel like it's something that's ours.
It was kind of cool because the way, again, the prologue happened, the women went off. They did their mile, 1.4 miles, and then the men went off 10 minutes later. Around the time that we were going to be going, the first place females started coming through. And so now all the men are standing there cheering on the women who were, the first probably 20 or so women that came through. And it was amping me up. I'm like, this is, oh my God, like, I really want to get going.
You start feeling the pressure and the energy.
There was like people jumping the start, like in anticipation and excitement on the men's side. It was funny.
I had one other experience that was similar to that in my life, in my racing career, and it was at the Hawaii Ironman. And I'm comparing your race to the Hawaii Ironman, which is pretty epic.
Tacona?
Oh, yeah. Where in the water, again, you hear like these like drum rolls on the shore. It's like this real like Hawaiian traditional like war, battle cry. And it like your heart rate is at 97,000 right before the race even starts, and there are a bunch of lifeguards on surfboards trying to keep you back, and they're saying like, hold the line, hold the line. It was like I'm like, what is going on right now?
That's the whole point of racing.
It was amazing. Like all these super fit triathletes there are like, they keep inching forward, and these we're like battling with the lifeguards trying to keep us back. And I felt the same way at the start of the midnight half, because again, everyone's kind of jockeying for that first little, try to get in the first one or two spots, and everyone just kind of keeps pushing forward. The whole crew keeps kind of inching up further and further and further into the street, and I just had the same exact feeling. I was getting really energized, more so than I have in a race for a long time.
Even talking about it gives me goosebumps. Thinking of it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it really was a good time. And then of course there was the after party, which is an after party. Who doesn't
Cosmo
love that?
Baker. Yeah, we had inherited a great DJ, luckily through a friend that couldn't do the event, and Cosmo was amazing, and he stepped up, and I think he kept a really good vibe the whole night.
I agree. Yeah, from the moment I walked in, from the moment I walked into that, I got there kind of early, so there wasn't like a ton of people around just yet. He was already going with the music, and I was like, this is different.
Yeah.
There's something different going on here. This isn't a New York Roadrunner event where you have a loudspeaker in your ear shouting directions at you. There really wasn't any directions until the pre-race meeting.
By design.
Right.
You don't need it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the people will figure it out.
Yeah.
At least I think so.
And there's a certain amount of experience, like you said earlier, that the field has a certain amount of experience inherently because they are part of the community and seen these things before.
Yeah, and like I said in the pre-race meeting, if you don't know what you're doing by that point, just go home. So.
You guys actually just posted a video of two women that appeared lost. I think they were talking to you.
Yeah, that was right after the start. So, yeah.
Was there a lot of that? Were a lot of people kind of getting lost?
No, they were just confused by the first checkpoint. So, but yeah, I don't think the course was fairly easy. Not easy, but I think
friendly. It was
friendly, yeah, because you could always find your way to the next checkpoint, and all the checkpoints were within a mile and a half, 2 miles of each other. We in previous midnight halves, people have really gotten lost. Like they go off and come back like 10 miles later.
Like Caitlin Phillips, didn't she get lost a couple times? Still won?
Well, she never got significantly lost because she was always able to recover. She, her fitness enabled her to recover. But Jerry Faulkner, for example, his first year running, we were escorting him, and he was killing people on Furman on the way out, and then obviously didn't know where he was going at a certain point, just ran into darkness on private property.
And just came back he came back in almost last place.
16th or something. But then he came back and he screamed at me that it was my fault that he lost and all this other shit because he didn't understand the format.
Yeah.
But he apologized later on.
He comes back with a life preserver. Yeah. It's all wet. Where'd you go?
Yeah, we could make the race a lot harder than it is, but we got to make it also fun. It's a balance.
Yeah. I mean, direction-wise, again, with my home field advantage, I was pretty confident in where I was going most of the way, but
That's a luxury that probably 99% of the field didn't have.
But if you compare it to bike alley cats, oftentimes they start the race, you go to the first checkpoint, and that's when you get the rest of the checkpoints.
So that'd be cool.
Right.
That'd be like a logistical nightmare, I think. For you guys.
I think for a lot of people, it wouldn't be fun.
I ran the Red Hook race several months ago. Before this is what whet my appetite for the midnight half. And right before, we knew we were going to Red Hook and back from somewhere underneath the FDR over there on the Lower East Side. But you changed the turnaround point. It was still in Red Hook, but it was in a different part of Red Hook, over by the IKEA, actually, which is where the turnaround point was for one of the checkpoint was for this race. And I remember everyone just they kind of expected it, but they totally panicked. Everyone broke out their phones. They were like, all right, how are we going to figure this out?
Well, that's his fault because he had a better turnaround point. So
like that morning,
the night of the race.
I was like, Joe, you have to change the turnaround point.
The cranes are so scenic that it was a no-brainer.
That is kind of cool. It's a cool spot. It's
that's one thing about, again, like, you inject Dave into a running race and the ideas are fresh and creative, but it's a different point of view. He's not too familiar with all the bullshit that goes on or that gets done, so it's just a nice variation. It adds a lot.
I think there's a lot of people, myself included, at one time have been like, why isn't there a clock at every mile? I need to know my splits. I need to know what's going on. And I'm glad it's not that way. Although there were actually clocks at every checkpoint. Which actually
they would have been the wrong time for the men. Because they started with the women's race.
Triathletes already know that.
Yeah, we did that just so people could see where the timing mats were, basically. It was more of a visual.
Actually, you know what? That's a good idea. There was a few points running into Sunset Park. I was like, where the hell am I going? I'm vaguely following. I think that's Eric Reidinger up front. I think, if I'm not sure. Again, a very well executed course, I would say. The photographers and the videographers. Where do you find people that, one, are excellent photographers, excellent videographers, very good at what they do in the artistic realm, but are also able to ride bikes and in streets, in traffic, in the rain, and are able to do these things? That's an interesting Venn diagram of a person that can do both those things kind of simultaneously.
I think it's all like the snake eating itself. I think because of the way that we design the events and because of the people involved and because of who they reach, because we only use word of mouth and we don't do these other things, it all becomes very insular and people want to contribute their skill sets. And early on, we were lucky to have photography as part of the skill sets that were being contributed. And because of the connection to the cycling world through Dave, a lot of people are adequate on bikes. And maybe they had shot the crit or, been involved somehow in that race. So to downplay into running is so easy for these people, like even like Dave, who's so used to something as intense as cycling, to take a step back to running. Everything slows down and becomes more controllable and accessible and easier to manipulate because it's slower. So the photography, I think, falls into that.
And you just make something spectacular, visually spectacular, like the Midnight Half. Like, you're in New York City, people are going to document it, and there's so much talent here with, all photography and video and art and everything. You make something like the Midnight Half, it would almost be impossible not to have really talented photographers there, documenting it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that draws that person. Do you think I just am thinking this question, it could be completely off base. I don't even know if I'm going to formulate it correctly, but do you think there's a connection between the photographers at the Midnight Half and the runners at the Midnight Half, if that makes any sense from a creative standpoint?
I think a lot of the photographers know the runners. So when they shoot them, they're shooting friends of theirs or they're shooting people that they have kind of an intimate knowledge of who they are. And I think that plays into the quality of the image and then that person taking that image and doing something with it and exposing that image to their followers or their pool of friends.
Yeah, they're not professional athletes. Most of them are professionals in New York City and they're, designers and artists and, they're living in
the photographers,
or
the athletes.
The athletes, right. So they know a lot of interesting people,
right, yeah.
Or maybe they're photographers themselves, and they tell their colleagues or their people inside their circle to come out and document it.
Yeah, I've mentioned this a bunch of times on the podcast before. I've interviewed a handful of pro athletes in one form or another, and it's great to do that, and it's fun to learn from them. But the people that I'm most interested in speaking with are the professionals, like the working professionals that also do these things on the side. I just find that just so interesting that you work these full-time jobs. It'd be so easy to go home and just watch Netflix all night and just get up and go do it again the next day. But, they're at the track, it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're going out for their, another run after work. And it's such an intense thing. It's such a difficult undertaking, and they just do it voluntarily and just because.
It's the most competitive city in the world, and every advantage comes into play. And I think even in a professional world, the physical advantage comes, brings you more than the average person.
I had this conversation. I recorded a podcast earlier this week, which is actually going to be released after this one. But it's Eric Gilbert, who has done 200. He raised a bunch of money for the Multiple Myeloma Foundation, which you'll find on iTunes in about 2 weeks. So stay tuned. But he actually talked about this exactly, about just the ways in which getting into, for him, it was ultra running, but the ways in which ultra running for him just changed his perspective on everything. And he was like a grown man. He was in his 30s or 40s, I think, when he first really started running. He's in his 50s now, doing tremendous, again, 200-mile runs. And he says it changed everything for him. It changed the way he viewed the world. It changed the way he worked. And it's really fun to be a part of that community, be surrounded by people like that again, take that competitiveness or that, that edge and brings it with them into their everyday lives.
It's kind of like superhero complex almost. Like, I feel like when somebody hears that you ran a 200-mile race, they look at you like you're something other than human. And I think that's scalable. Like, in New York, I used to tell people if I ran 15 miles, the reaction would be surprised or shocked. And, now I'm in a group of people where that's pretty normal. Yeah, right. But as an architect, like to say you ran 8 miles last night would really take people by surprise, And there's an addiction, I think, to that impressing of people, not so much for the value of what they see in you, but also just for the way you value yourself, that you're doing something exceptional.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, you said what I was trying to say, just better. God, Joe. It's an interesting community, and again, when you then marry that attitude with the creative side, it's just a cool environment. It's a fun place to be.
It's hard to imagine why more people haven't done it. I think there's a fear in execution of ideas, like a fear of putting it out there and a fear of actually physically executing it, that sometimes, if you overcome that, it opens the floodgates, and then you realize you can really do anything.
How'd you get over that fear?
By meeting Dave and having somebody that had done something similar kind of have your back and kind of show you how to do something.
So you hadn't done any of your events? So just to give a brief history, OSR started off as it was a running group, or is a running group.
Yeah, it was just Tuesday. It was a Tuesday morning meetup at the time, actually.
At one point, did you start doing the events?
The first event I did was a silent auction fundraiser for the Lower East Side Girls Club, and right. The purpose was to get into the New York City half through the fundraising option. So I organized a silent auction, and never done it before. Didn't even know what a silent auction really was, but just figured it out as I went. And then that was a little bit different because it was just taking all the friends I had met in the neighborhood and taking their, if they had a business or if they were artists, taking their product or their service and putting it on an auction. The first event race-wise was the Midnight Half, and that was a byproduct of seeing Dave execute the crit and saying, what if we did something running? Like, what could we do with that?
All right, yeah.
And the first year was pretty scary. That was probably the hardest year because someone kind of tipped the cops off to it in advance, and they were staking out the start house, and we were like,
"Who's the narc?" God,
we were like,
I don't know.
I think we know who it is, but we were like trying to decide
what's their name. Let's go get.
They're actually a rival race organizer. But we were actually like trying to decide, are we actually going to do this or not? Like, are we really going to because there was like undercover cops parked all around the block watching us.
The night before or the day before, they had called the precinct had called me, but I missed a call, and I called them the next morning, which was the morning of the race, and I'm talking to a woman and
yes, hi, police, this is Joe.
No, basically said, this is me.
What do you want?
Well, she said to me, she's like, we're concerned about this event. What is it? They were afraid it was going to be a critical mass scenario,
right?
And I happened to know.
Orchard Street.
Yeah. The week of the race, I had met a cop and through my roommate, And I just randomly said his name.
You grew up in Queens. How do you not know a million cops?
Well, this is a New York City, Manhattan precinct. So anyway, so I randomly said this guy's name in the context of this conversation. It turned out to be this woman's partner. And she said, "Oh, you know him?" And I said, "Well, yeah, him and his girlfriend and so. And she's like, "You know what, Joe? Have a great event." Because after that, she felt a certain comfort level. But they were still parked outside the night of the event, checking out what it was and making sure it wasn't anything.
So we're
crazy.
like, that's like where you really had to overcome your fear. You're like, are we going to do this and like risk?
Who knows what?
Yeah, risk the consequences, and then we actually had the starter house was on the second level, and you had to walk down a stairwell into the street. And we had everyone kind of like, if I remember right, they like staged in the stairwell. Yeah. I said, as soon as everyone gets on the street, just start running. Like,
we're on our cell phones together. So he's on the street waiting for the light to turn green, and I'm in the start house. It's dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. There's like 100 people in the
terrifying.
room. And then he's like, "Go," and I'm like, "Go," and then the whole room just empties in like 20 seconds. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
but this actually had a similar feeling because of the scale, how much we scaled up. It was like doing it for the first time again. The formula.
And you've been off for a couple of years. You had to,
Yeah, well. Yeah. That's true. We've done a lot of races in the last couple of years. So we didn't really lose that momentum,
I like picturing the two of you on the first ever midnight half. You guys just like what if we get pinched?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? If I go to jail, who's gonna bail me out?
I literally had a vision of running from the cops at the start of the race and having them chase us.
What route am I
going to take? But they've always been super supportive, I have to say. A couple of times that they've seen the races going on.
Yeah, there's worse things to do in New York than.
Actually, I will say, I'm raised by, my dad was a cop. I was raised by a New York City police officer. But we were running, and there was a good stream of us running down toward the Hamilton Avenue Bridge initially along, I guess Hamilton Avenue. And I saw a cop kind of pass me. All right, his lights were on. I saw his lights first. I kind of looked over my shoulder. I was like, "Oh, here we go."
Here it is.
There's a lot of people running in one direction. Like it's either we're all being chased or something illicit is happening.
They all have numbers on.
he actually went over his the loudspeaker and he's like, "Come on, guys, you can do it. Go.
I'm telling you, 2 a.m. or it must have been 3 a.m. We're on Allen Street, down by the salt shed on near South Street. And we're finishing up one of the bread route races, and there's a couple cops just standing there watching. So I walked over to them, and I just, wanted to check in with them, make sure everything was cool. And they thought it was it was a break in their workday, really. They're like, "No, it's awesome. We get to watch this, see people finish."
Yeah.
So it's been nothing but support from them.
So far.
Yeah.
Not after this podcast.
Wholesome fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, FDNY. You're going to get us on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We operate very differently.
Yeah.
All right. How about the Red Hook the Red Hook Crit has a pretty similar backstory. Is that two questions?
Yeah,
one,
very similar.
What can you give us a little bit of a history on the Red Hook Crit? And two, is it ever coming back?
Yeah, so the Red Hook Crit I started in 2008 for my 26th birthday. I just wanted to. I had a lot of bike racing friends, and I realized they wouldn't come to my birthday party unless I had some kind of shot at personal glory. So I organized a race around the block in front of my house in Red Hook and called it the Red Hook Criterium. And at the time, I was racing a lot of alleycats, which were mostly raced on track bikes, and I was also racing a lot of road bike criteriums. So I kind of combined the two. And for the first 3 years, no permits, no insurance. We were just kind of occupying the streets of Red Hook, and it started getting really big. And by the third year, there was maybe 1,000 people.
It was really big. Yeah. The years I went, it was a good amount of people there.
Well, the last year before we moved onto a real venue, we probably had we had no permission at all, and we had 1,000 people on the streets. And the next year, I had called the local precinct to see the process to get a permit, and they're like, "Oh, we've been looking for you," and we were going to shut you down this year, so it's a good thing you called us. And then I did. I organized the race up until last year, and then this year we're taking a short hiatus, but trying our best to come back next year.
All right, very good.
Can I ask him a question?
You know what's funny? Before we started this, I was going to be like, "Yeah, feel free to ask each other questions," and I forgot to give you guys that.
Go ahead.
What led to the rapid growth in the beginning of the Red Hook Crit? What was it just the fact that it was something new and you had a close group of friends that would talk about it, or?
Yeah, I think it actually started out, for the first couple of years, it was actually hard to get people to race it because it was so crazy.
That's a better question than I was going to ask.
Yeah. And then, but it seemed like every year it started like doubling or tripling in size. And then it was just getting exponentially bigger. And then in the third year, I brought the race to Italy. And then that just like opened up a whole new world for it.
They also did it, like you were on 60 Minutes, like that. I'm sure that helped.
It was already pretty big at that point.
Okay.
I mean, it was like every year it was like at least double the size the year before.
It doesn't feel like there's any one media exposure that ever does a significant amount of growth.
Yeah, I never felt any impact from a single media exposure. It was more like
just wait for the Personal Record podcast to drop. You guys,
maybe this one will change everything for us. But yeah, the Red Hook Radio was more like, we started adding cities, and once we added a city, it like made the next race so much bigger. Because more, by last year we had riders from over 50 countries racing it, so they were really just coming from all the corners of the world to compete.
Yeah, it became a legit bike race in the biking world.
And created a new sport.
In New York, people in like the New York City cyclists like almost couldn't even qualify for it anymore. So it's really like we were lucky enough to create this global community through the Red Hook Crit.
I can picture those conversations right now. Like, man, that race, I can't even get into it anymore.
The New York City cyclists, they're cool, but it was on another level. Yeah,
have a New York City kind of mini crit before.
Yeah. It would be like the amateur race. And then right. it was the Italians who started really conquering it,
as they do in cycling.
Yeah,
as they have historically.
Yeah.
So you think it's going to come back next year?
Yes. Sponsor and God willing.
I remember when the 60 Minutes thing came out on you, my dad was like, Tim, turn on 60 Minutes. There's this thing on bike. Like anytime he sees anything about like running or riding, he's like, check it out. And I turn it on. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I sat next to him at Anna Doherty's wedding like a year ago. I was like, I know that guy.
It was actually really hard working on that piece because they came to the race in Milan in 2014, and we were still pretty low budget at that point, and they just demanded so much of my time. like they like at one point they had like rented this Audi like luxury sedan and had like parked it in the middle of the course, and we're trying to start one of the qualifying sessions, and they're always in the way.
Yeah,
I had to do like a 3-hour interview the morning after the race.
Could you imagine,
3 hours?
Yeah. Could you imagine doing anything the morning after one of these races? Like the amount of energy that goes into executing, and then having to rack your brain for a cohesive conversation.
Yeah, they ended up using like 10 seconds of it because I said my energy was too low.
What's funny is as I'm watching, because I can picture it still. I remember thinking like he's really preoccupied. Like I interpret it as like, because I mean, we can get into this a little bit later, but like there's like a lot of liability, like in the Midnight Half, but especially the Red Hook Crit. Guys are going really fast, and you've had issues with that in the past. But I remember thinking like he's really concerned about what's going on. These guys are trying to fucking talk to him.
Yeah.
And, like I was a bartender for a long time, and I always remember you're shaking drinks. You're too deep at the bar. You're overwhelmed by the 400 people that need a drink from you in that moment. And some guy's like, hey, so how's your day going?
Yeah.
Fuck you, guy. Are you kidding me? Are you asking me questions right now? Yeah. And guys like that don't know what it's like to be busy, in my opinion. And so I feel like the 60 Minute guys where you're in the middle of this storm.
But for like a week, basically. A week.
Right.
Yeah, that was hard.
Seriously, guys, I have a job to do. This is important.
Seriously.
But good. I mean, I'm glad that you watched that piece.
I did, a bunch of years ago. I watched it live as it was happening. My dad made me.
Yeah.
All right. So I know upcoming is the OSR men's and women's 10K, which I know you don't have a date for, but can you give us a little bit of idea about where and around when that might be happening?
I just think it's inevitably going to end up in Brooklyn, probably maybe touching into Manhattan, but
Brooklyn again. I see. All right.
It's just I mean it just is a better place to do an event.
Better borough, Joe. Just say it. It's a better borough.
It's a better borough than some other Staten Island boroughs.
All right, there you
it's
go.
A better racetrack.
Yeah, no.
On that we can agree.
We can definitely do more with the course in Brooklyn, I think.
Where in Brooklyn?
That's still a variable. Okay. I'm not really sure. I do want to kind of like touch Manhattan if possible, so close to Manhattan in Brooklyn, let's say. Right. But yeah, I want to kind of do men's and women's in the same night this year, make a bigger event, kind of give people more of something to look forward to and watch and kind of cheer for, and give them a similar experience to the Midnight Half, something to care about.
Well, if there's one thing your runners do, it's care a lot about what you're doing. So I think that's going to be something that won't be difficult to attain. Yeah. Again, you guys have touched on something, and I'm not sure what it is. I can't put my finger on it. Although I guess it's just the race. They love what you guys are doing, and you guys are doing it very, very well. Do you have any questions for Joe?
It's okay if you don't.
Hurry.
Yeah. It's okay. When's the next Midnight Half? That's a big question.
All right, let's do that.
Yeah.
When's the next Midnight Half?
We don't know, but Joe has like the connections with all the partners. So
Yeah, we'll see.
He really he has the motivation to make it happen. So.
Maybe if Nike can get their shit together.
Yeah.
Nike, I have to say, I really avoided any kind of interacting with brands and sponsors in the early days of OSR because I felt it was a compromise in creative control and all that stuff. But Nike has been a great partner the last year, and they've allowed me to be in.
Is it Nike or is it Nike NYC? What's the difference there? I'm not sure.
I mean, it's a regional market, I'm
Okay.
assuming. So Nike NYC, to be more accurate, has been very supportive of OSR. And I think it's because they see the impact it has on the community that they're trying to support. And, we're in a very fortunate position, but, the way it goes with sponsors, it's nothing lasts forever. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's an added pressure after the success of the Midnight Half to continue to be creative and come up with new, exciting ways to interact with the running community.
Yeah.
This is my personal take on this, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I feel like Nike has changed their image a lot in the last bunch of years.
I mean, to be honest,
They went from like the Big Brother, like the kids making shoes and third world nations like brand to all of a sudden like they're cool again, and people running
a lot of
stuff.
smart people in the marketing departments.
Yeah.
Well, they're supporting local.
Sure. Yeah.
endeavors.
I'm not saying they don't deserve it. It's
No,
interesting.
it's just a smarter approach, I think, when you're trying to be successful in a city like New York or in these urban contexts, to support local creatives instead of trying to implement your own ideas into these cities. A city like New York, you're talking about a mass of people that have their own ideas. That's why we're all here. We don't want to be told what something is. We want to show you what it is. So Nike is allowing us to do that on a larger scale. And that's the first brand to really do that. Instead of plugging you into their equation, they allow you to dictate your moves. And this is the result. The Midnight Half is the result of that creative freedom.
All right.
So now we just got to find those same people in more cities, more countries.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys do that. Maybe I'll make the trip out to Milan.
Yeah, or wherever.
London,
Or
Paris, or wherever you guys are planning to do it.
As soon as it happens, you got to book the first flight.
I kind of like the idea of London first.
London?
Yeah, as a launching point. But
Why?
we'll see. Why? Just because I feel like the running community there is accessible and strong. Language not being one of the priorities there, but
No, I mean, I think it'd be easier to deal
But
with.
I think-
I've organized races in London and Milan, and Milan's actually the easiest and one of the best cities to organize races.
there you go.
Says the expert. Okay.
Yeah.
London is one of the hardest, but it would be an amazing place to do a urban running race.
It would only get easier from there. Let's put it that.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of urban areas in the country, in the world, that I think you guys can really just think outside the box and get that done. But I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys both very much for joining us. This, as always, was a fun and interesting conversation. I actually had a bunch of stuff written down, which we didn't even get to because it was just a fun, fluid conversation.
Awesome.
But thank you guys again. I really appreciate it. I had a really great time at the Midnight Half. If and when they start posting their men's and women's 10Ks and their next Midnight Half and the Midnight Half abroad, whatever they're doing, I highly, highly, highly recommend you all check it out. Please be sure to participate in that. And of course, when the Red Hook Crit comes back around, please just go and check it out, man. It's a lot of fun.
It's a great night.
Even if you're not a cyclist, you might become a cyclist after this.
We also do a 5K run with it. So.
And there's a 5K run with it.
Don't forget that.
It'll be accurately marked, I expect.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I still have pain from that. But anyway, that's another story.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. For all you out there listening, keep on listening. There'll be more episodes to come. Thanks a lot.